Okay, so welcome back to Math Explained. We're working on factoring still. So the last part we got through kind of a simple quadratic, and now we're moving on to a slightly more complicated. So before, let me recap, we said, so our generic form, so generic was y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. That's important because we're going to need this a, b, and c in solving. A, b, and c are just numbers. They could be anything, and those will be known. So these are numbers, and you already know those. So if you had, our example was y equals x squared plus 5x plus 6. So okay, so we worked through that example on the last one. So I'm not going to go through it all in detail here. But basically, we said that right here, our a is a 1, our b is a 5, and our c is a 6. So on this one, it was easier to solve. So we had a times c equals 6. We figured out that our factor pair was this one. Oh, not 2 and 3. So 2 plus 3 equals 5. So we said our factors were x plus 2 and x plus 3. So we skipped some steps because our a was a 1. So that's all in the last video. You can go back and check that out if you want to. So now we're going to move on to the case if your a is not a 1. So okay, so let's say we have this. Let's say we have f of x, which is really just another way of saying y. We have f of x equals 10x squared plus 13x minus 3. Okay, so notice that now the x squared has something in front of it. It's not just x squared all by itself. Okay, so let me put this back. I don't need this part 2 just a second. Let me get that out of the way. Okay, so I have this. But I'm going to move steps 9 and 10 down because we're going to add back in our 6, 7, and 8. So this time we're not skipping them. Okay, so our first step was to set it equal to 0. Our second step was to list out our a, b, and c. So our a in this case is a 10, because that's what's in front of the x squared. Our b is the number that's in front of the x, and that's a 13. And our c is this constant out here, which is negative 3. Okay, so far so good. Next step, a times c. That's 10 times negative 3, which is negative 30. So okay, so we've got a negative, so this is slightly different than the last one too, but that's okay. We can handle it. We're going to factor this. Okay, so the factors, the pairs that multiply together to make 30, we have 1 and 30. We have 2 and 15. We have 3 and 10. And 5 and 6. But they have to multiply together to make a negative. So one of those pairs is going to have to be a negative. And to figure out which one, we look at our b value. So b is positive. So that means that our larger numbers are going to be positive. So we're going to make these all negative. Okay. We got that. No big deal. So now we want to pick the factor pair that adds to b. Well, so b is 13. So negative 1 plus 30 is 29. So that doesn't work. So that doesn't work. Negative 2 plus 15 gives us 13, right? Because 15 minus 2 is 13. So really don't need to add all of those out there. You can. Well, I guess I'll leave it. But this is our pair. Okay, now is where we add in these other steps. So for step 6, we're going to rewrite our equation, but we're going to replace the middle term. Rewrite, replace, middle. And you're going to replace it with your factors. So my 10x squared is going to stay the same, so 10x squared. My negative 3 is going to stay the same. What's going to change is this part in the middle. So instead of doing plus 13x, I'm going to put my factor pairs in there. So negative 2x plus 15x. So negative 2x plus 15x we already said was 13x. So we haven't changed it, we just split it up. Okay, the next one is we're going to split. I'm putting it in parentheses because we're not really splitting. And we're going to consider the 2 halves. So this technically, this one and the next step are actually factoring by grouping. So I'm going to kind of divide it down the middle a little bit. I'm going to look at this side by itself, and I'm going to look at this side by itself. So step 8 is we're going to pull out our common terms. Pull out common terms. There we go. Okay, so if I look at it on the left side, so both of these numbers have an x in them, right? And both of these are divisible by 2. So I can pull out a 2x. And if I do that, let me make that just kind of an ugly parentheses. If I do that, I'm left with, so 10x squared divided by 2x, I'm left with the 5x here. Negative 2x divided by 2x, that's a negative 1, because we pulled it out. This one, they're both divisible by 3. And there was a plus sign here in the middle, so I'm going to leave that. So I'm going to say 3, open parentheses. 15x divided by 3 is 5x. Negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. And so that's there. Now notice I didn't actually split it, I just kind of looked at it in pieces. Okay, so now step 9, we're going to regroup. And this is this whole factor by grouping thing. So I have two factors here, or two things. Here, let me shrink this because I'm running out of room. I have a tendency to do that. Okay. So I noticed, so I want it to be in two factors, right? Because it's an x squared, so I'm going to have two possible solutions. So I'm going to look at what I have here. So they're both multiplying by this 5x minus 1. That's our common factor. So I'm going to put that in here. 5x minus 1. That's going to be one of our factors. The other factor is the part that's left outside. So I have a 2x and a plus 3. So it's going to be 2x plus 3. If this doesn't make sense to you, think of it this way. If you have a 2x and plus 3x, this is like 2 times x plus 3 times x. You can rewrite this as 2 plus 3 times x, right? Which is 5x. So that's basically what we're doing here. We have a variable in here, but that's okay. We treat it like a number. So okay, let me get rid of this stuff. Okay, so now I have these two factors. It's still equal to 0 because this is still my equation. So all of these steps, these were all still equal to 0. So now to solve, which is step 10, I set each one individually equal to 0. So 2x plus 3 equals 0. If I subtract 3 from both sides and then I divide by 2, my x equals negative 3 over 2. Running out of room, otherwise I would show you those individually. Ta-da! There we go. There's one answer. My next answer, I'm going to go put it over here. 5x minus 1 equals 0. So I add a 1 to both sides. And then I divide by 5 on both sides, and I get an x equals 1 over 5. That's my second answer. So, okay, so we did the exact same thing as before, only we added in our missing steps. So if your a is not a 1, this is what you would do. If you have your a as a 1, you can just go back to what we did before, totally skip these steps, and then whatever your factor pair is, those are your factors. Hooray, factoring!